There's this moment in an empath's life where something inside of them just goes quiet. And it's not depression, it's not exhaustion, it's something else entirely. Carl Jung actually saw this as a final stage of awakening, a huge transformation that can be, pretty unsettling for anyone watching from the outside. So let's dive into this incredible psychological journey.
This quote, man, it just hits the nail on the head, doesn't it? It's not about becoming some cold, heartless person. Nope. It's about a deep shift in personal power. It's about the empath no longer being a puppet to the emotional states of everyone around them.
And yeah, that's the big question, right? That's what we're going to explore. How does this transformation actually happen? And what does the world even look like from the other side of it all?
So to really get the ending of this journey, we have to go all the way back to the beginning. Back to the unconscious role that kind of defines the empath's entire early life.
Jung had this absolutely perfect term for it, the emotional shock absorber. And it's so accurate because these people don't just feel for others. They literally absorb the psychological stress and tension in a room, in a family, in a whole social system, often so nobody else has to.
And you see this play out, everywhere, right? At tense family dinners, in messy office politics. The empath becomes the unpaid therapist, the constant mediator, the one holding it all together, usually at their own expense.
But here's the fascinating part. While the empath is consciously forgiving everyone and trying to smooth things over, their deep psyche is doing something totally different. It's building this massive, detailed archive of everyone's patterns. It's cataloging every single time their kindness was exploited. You could say a storm is definitely gathering just below the surface.
Okay, so all of this is building up. And then something has to give. This brings us to the critical turning point, the moment it all breaks. And it's almost always kicked off by one profound betrayal.
It's like a domino effect. It starts with all that unconscious data being collected, right? Then, bam, a major betrayal from someone they trusted ignites the whole thing. But the absolute key, the real explosion, is step 3. That devastating moment they realize they betrayed themselves by ignoring their own gut feelings for so long.
And this is so important. The pain from what the other person did is one thing, for sure. But the anger at oneself for allowing it, for silencing that little voice inside, that's what truly shatters their old reality to pieces.
This whole collapse leads to what Jung called the withdrawal of projections. It's a fancy way of saying the empath finally stops seeing people for who they could be and starts seeing them for who they've actually been all along. The fantasy just evaporates, and what's left is a cold, hard, clear reality.
All right, now we get to the part of this that most people just don't understand. After that final snap, you'd expect a huge emotional storm, right? But that's not what happens. What happens is a quiet, almost unnerving calm.
Just look at this shift. It is night and day. Where there used to be anger and pain that would eventually turn into forgiveness, now there's just nothing. Indifference. All those old emotional buttons that used to work, they've been completely disconnected.
It's honestly like they've unplugged from some kind of emotional matrix. Any attempts to guilt-trip them or suck them into drama, they're just observed now, almost with a kind of scientific curiosity. The energy they used to pour into all that is just gone.
So what's actually happening inside their head? Well, Jung called it shadow integration. And all that really means is the empath is finally welcoming back the parts of themselves they were always taught to deny. The selfish parts that say no, that set boundaries, that put their own oxygen mask on first.
And we really need to get this straight. This shadow isn't some dark, evil thing. Not at all. It's the empath's own survival instinct. It's their psychological immune system finally kicking in to protect them from getting sick again.
Okay, so this all sounds very psychological and deep, but what does it actually look like day to day? Let's get into the practical side of things. What happens when these new powerful boundaries go up?
Well, they develop this superpower, really. You could call it selective empathy. They can still feel everything just as deeply, but now they consciously choose who gets that precious energy. It's no longer a free-for-all for anyone who comes along.
Think about it at work. That person who was always the office's emotional dumping ground, the one everyone went to with their stress and their drama, well, that service is officially closed for business. They do their job, they do it well, and they go home. And you see the exact same thing happen within the family.
The person who always played the role of the unpaid mediator who absorbed all the dysfunction? Yeah, they've officially retired. They don't cause a scene, they just stop participating in the chaos.
And, of course, people don't like this. Not one bit. The people who benefited from the old dynamic, they see this newfound self-preservation as just being selfish or cruel. They don't get that it's actually an act of survival.
So this whole journey, it brings us to our final section. And it's so important to see this not as a loss, but as a victory. It's the birth of a totally sovereign individual.
I mean, this entire process is just the living, breathing proof of this core Jungian lesson. The empath finally learns that setting themselves on fire to keep other people warm was never real love. True compassion, they discover, has to start with the self.
So in the end, the empath doesn't actually lose any of their gifts. They just learn how to use them wisely. They're still full of love, but now it's love with boundaries. It's compassion, but with wisdom. It's empathy, but with sovereignty. You see, this whole awakening, it isn't an ending at all. It's a profound beginning. It's a victory over all the old programming that told them their only worth came from how much they could give away. So the real question isn't about what's been lost. It's about whether this is the start of your own sovereign life.